Everybody, welcome back to another review. Hope you guys have been enjoying the content of the channel as of late. It is very late right now. It's past midnight, going on about 12:30. I was gonna see this earlier, but I had a few things I had to do, so I decided to catch a late screening of this. Um, and as far as I know, this is the last film that I will be seeing this year. So this will be the last of 2023 for me. Um, and Interesting film to end the year on, we shall say. Um, that film being Poor Things, which was directed by Yorgos Lanthimos, I believe that's how you say his name. Uh, Director of some notable pieces, specifically The Lobster, which I actually really enjoyed, and being the only film of his that I've seen. Other work of his include The Killing of a Sacred Deer, The Favorite, which a lot of people seem to enjoy, Dogtooth being another film which I'm curious to see. Um, and this stars Emma Stone as Bella, who is basically a Frankenstein type creation, um, made by Willem Dafoe. Her original form being Victoria, she was pregnant with a baby and decides to throw herself off a bridge, and Willem Dafoe picks her up and transfers the conscience of the baby that she was pregnant with, the brain of the baby, into Victoria's mind, and Willem Dafoe raises said person, and that's how we get to Bella, and we follow her journey as she becomes one of her own and forms her own identity and learns the world at large and perceives it as she does in her very simplistic way of thinking. She speaks in third person, and and has the certain ideas about the world at large, specifically with her sexuality, or as she calls it, happy time. Um, and that is bare bones what the film is studying and wishing to focus on, which is this idea of identity, coming into your own. Um, and Aesthetically, I mean, it goes without saying, it is very interesting. As far as I'll take it, pleasing. I'm not entirely sure I would say that, but I definitely sit with the word interesting. Performance-wise, it's fine. I found the performances to be um, enjoyable. Nothing too outstanding in terms of just singular performances. With the ensemble that it is, it's okay. Um, what became because we've talked about Poor Things before on this channel, with regards to the sexual content, and I have to say that sexual content in this is much more apparent than I thought it was going to be. I thought it would be one scene in particular, but it's actually a collection of scenes of um, very deliberate and very upfront sex sequences. Um, and I was waiting for the point of why this stuff was happening, why we had to see this so much of her physicality. When that became apparent, like, what was the commentary being made there? And the only suggested idea is that she is, um, I guess you could say she's exploring, as in the context of like a teenager or like a college kid or something like that. But that feels, digestible when such a sequence plays out once or twice, when you're having to play it as much as it does. It brings about two things. One, a little bit of a pleasurable or not a little bit, a very, very pleasurable undertone, which I think is questionable. Um, but for another, it also kind of showcases the redundance in its story, for it feels that in shock value, it can display some sort of depth, when really it's just making it more blatant to how shallow its story is, because it isn't much more than just a coming of age tale. I mean, everything about the film. I mean, there are odd things visually, but it's just there for oddness sake. It's not there really to build upon its ideas. It's just there just to be odd. At some points, it reminded me of like a Monty Python, but misunderstanding Monty Python also at the same breath. Like it's wanting to be odd. Like it just wants to do things, and it thinks within such randomness that it could be uh, there can be some build. There could be some line of logic, and there is a line of logic there, but that logic is not more weightful. It thinks it is. It thinks it has more weight. It thinks it has more meat. And what it does is just pretty much just hang out on the surface for most of its time. And speaking of time, I mean, we're speaking of a 2.5 hour film, and it definitely wears on you. I felt like kicked out at some point. Not only for just how long it is, but also with the sheer redundance in both its shock value. And the reason why I label it that is because of how they wish to show these sequences. It's not there to bring out some sort of like entry, like, oh, okay, interesting. It's mainly there just to get the reaction. Literally, how it's edited, how it's cut. There's jump cuts at one point of her like having sexy sex stuff, um, like it's very blatant that that's what it is geared for, and that's what it's being utilized for. And it thinks that it could also find humor within such a thing, and it's just I I, I found myself more uncomfortable with that stuff. I wasn't really comfortable with that sort of thing. Um, there are also like suggestions to like the lobster with like how like there's points where animals are being combined, and at the very end there's almost like a blatant callback, it seems, to the lobster. Um, like this idea of like combining and all that sort of stuff. Like I don't know if it's a trend in Yorgo's work where it's he's having to package social commentary within transferring of like human skin to like different material. I'm not sure if that's just a thing within Yorgos's work. I haven't seen his other works. So I don't know if that's a thing or if that's just with the lobster in this. I don't know, but um, I can't say I was bored. I mean, shock value will always create some form of intrigue, but that intrigue was mainly stemmed from the fact that I'm seeing Emma Stone pleasuring herself constantly and having multiple sex scenes just for the hell of it. And it's it's I guess my attention is there, but it's there for not for the right reasons. Like, because narratively speaking, it dries. It's not something that gets. This might sound kind of to play. I guess ultimately the film sensibilities. It doesn't get more wet. It just gets more dry. So, um, it's kind of kind of an extreme way, but ultimately that's how the film's mentality is. It's that of an extremist, and I it's interesting by aesthetic, but by overall emotion and overall narrative, I didn't find myself um, I didn't find myself that wowed. I found myself more just like, okay, like it has the aesthetics of like Guillermo del Toro, um, but it has the directing style or the directing sensibilities of like Lars von Trier, and not entirely a great combination if you were to ask me. Um, so I didn't find it that I wasn't offended by it or anything like that, but it just felt highly unnecessary with how much it's packaging certain certain visuals and like almost wrapping the whole story around those sort of things. Like it's almost finding excuses to just do these things, like to just have these abundance of sex sequences play out. It just feels like it's just finding excuses for it. Like, oh, okay, she's discovering herself, she's doing this and that, and it's like, I I get that, but you don't need 10 to 15. I'm not kidding. I think it's like double digits almost, like with how many sex scenes are in this. Like, it's it's it definitely can be a tad bit concerning in terms of what's the approach and how what the director is ultimately feeling and overall craftsmanship. Like I said, I think there's a little bit of a pleasurable feeling there. Um, it's a very horny film, and I don't think that it needed to be. Less of that, I feel, would have. When less of that is present, it actually is. It's fair. Still very on the surface, but fair enough. Um, but when all that stuff is apparent and it's there for quite a long time, and we're talking about a 2.5 hour film, it's there a lot. Um, it it just like I just found myself more just like okay, why, like why do we need this? Like there's no reason for this to be here. It's just there just for the and you definitely got that, but not much of the hmm hmm. So by design, it got what it wanted, but that doesn't make for a great film. It just makes for a momentary reaction. So yeah. So it was just you know, it got it could have been trimmed down by length and also just by what's being shown. Um, it's not offensive, but I could see where people might take offense to it by just how much it plays with those certain sequences and the indulgence within such a thing. Um, like, I could see where people would have issues with it. I'm not sure if there are issues with it. I feel like there might be, um, but yeah. Um, there's an it's horny. It's kind of extreme, and it rides with that with both the definitions of mediocrity and shock value. And what I got was just something more bland than interesting. Because ultimately, that's how I felt about it. I just felt more just as time went on. As I said, it's not, to use a dirty like metaphor to play with the film, it's not more wet as time went on. It just became more and more dry. So yeah, so those are my thoughts on Poor Things. I thought it was just nothing too crazy. I mean, visually, yeah, there's some stuff there, but by overall craftsmanship, by overall depth, it feels rather absent. It feels more just on what's on the surface. So, but those are my thoughts. You guys let me know your thoughts on Poor Things if you guys have seen it. I know it's getting a lot of like consider awards consideration and blah 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 blah. It's just one of those movies. Um, so but let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. What your guys' thoughts on it were, and yeah, that's gonna be it for me. And I think that'll be it for 2023. So I don't know if I'll do like a top 10 thing. I don't know. We'll see. Um, but just stay tuned. Maybe that video will come out. Uh, but yeah, so let me know your thoughts on the film and just in general with 2023. We have a video for that, actually, a year recap coming up pretty soon. But stay tuned for that as well. But yeah, so that's gonna be it for me. I'm gonna go home now because it is fucking late. And until then, guys, I will catch you guys in the next video. Bye.